Star Wars High Republic. Let's talk about it. Little disclaimer before we get started. I'm not going to be covering the High Republic comic books because I have not read any of those yet. I will also not be going into the Acolyte series on Disney Plus, and I will not be doing the 2 books that are associated with the Acolyte series because those are all like 75 to 100 years after the rest of this era of storytelling. In the future, I may go back through and break down all the books individually, but for the purposes of this video, I'm doing the overall arc of the High Republic novels. Here's how I'm going to be rating things. I'm going to go over the plot, the characters, the world building, and the conflict, not necessarily in that order. I'm going to rank each of those 1 through 5, and then give it a final number at the end. Final disclaimer, this will include spoilers. That's your warning. I'm here to talk about the full story, so we're going to get into it. The central plot of the High Republic focuses on the Jedi in this era as they deal with a galaxy-wide conflict for the first time in a very, very long time. Like, close to 1,000 years. These Jedi, discombobulated not only by the sheer audacity of someone behaving this wildly towards them and the Republic, but by these super weird creatures that start appearing called the Nameless, don't handle it well, especially at first. Sidebar. There's like 5 books set 150 years prior to the main storyline that explains why this group hates the Jedi, how they discovered the Nameless creatures, and brought more of them into the galaxy. This extremist group, called the Nihil, starts stretching the Jedi and the volunteer Republic army very thin. Simultaneously, there's this dark side-powered species of living plant monsters that accidentally get released from their Force prison by one of the Jedi teams. So the Jedi are kind of getting their butts kicked for a while, fighting on all fronts. They take some big hits, but the central theme of the franchise starts to shine through. Hope. They push back the plant monsters and focus their efforts on the Nihil again, and then immediately start getting their butts kicked again. They also discover a plague-like blight that consumes all life around it, even whole planets, and it is somehow connected to the Nihil's nameless creatures. Eventually, the Jedi realize the home planet of the Nameless creatures is some kind of vergence in the Force for both the light and the dark side. And the cause of the blight is coming from this planet, requiring a sort of sacrifice at the end after the final showdown. Ultimately, we watch the Jedi, most of them, survive and overcome the galaxy-wide conflict with the Nihil, but we also see lots of the seeds planted that wind up dragging the Jedi into the politics of the Republic. Let's talk about the world building. But this is part of an already established universe. These people didn't build this world. Calm down. What do I mean by world building? In this context, I'm talking about how well these stories served the pre-established universe as well as adding in elements of their own. For example, the complex planets of Iram and Arano. Absolutely beautiful world building done on both of these planets. They share a moon between their gravitational pulls. One of them is a desert world with its own rich lore, and the other is a mostly ocean planet with super contrasting ways of life and traditions. This is in a time of the galaxy where the Republic is exploring and expanding into the Outer Rim. This is well over 100 years before the prequels, so it's all new to the Jedi and the Republic. They're discovering life outside the Republic, a lot of them for the first time. And that makes a perfect opportunity for world building, especially in a universe like Star Wars. And 9 times out of 10, these stories absolutely nailed it and made something awe-inspiring. There are so many more characters than I could ever talk about in one video. Yeah, I'm going to come back and do individual books later. But let's cover some of the most important ones. Elzar Mann, Avar Kriss, and Stellan Gios. I could talk about this trio for hours. Avar being the golden goose, Stellan being the rule-following, council-appointed example, and Elzar being one of the most human characters I've ever seen in a Star Wars story. Stellan shows us the quiet side of leadership, the doubts you inevitably feel but push through to make tough decisions anyways. And the, spoiler alert, relationship between Elzar and Avar is hands down the best depicted relationship in the galaxy far, far away. There's none of that I don't like sand nonsense. And I can't tell if it was intentional or not, but they wind up creating really a perfect example of a faith-based relationship in these stories between them. Baba Yaga and Belle Zettifar. And Ember. Ember is Belle's charhound, which is a fire-breathing dog. And yes, it is as cool as it sounds. Man, I think these two make one of my favorite best friend duos in Star Wars. We get to watch them grow from these shy teenage Padawans into these two Jedi Knights who balance each other incredibly well. At one point in the books, Baba Yaga goes missing and is presumed dead. And there is a whole novella dedicated to Belle going on this months-long journey to find him. And it is still one of my favorite stories in the whole series, even though it's just a novella. Affie Hollow, Leox Jasi, and of course, Geode. These are my favorite non-force-wielding characters in this era. Affie is a pilot who inherits an entire shipping guild from her adopted mother and leads not just her vessel.
Their ship is called the Vessel.
But the whole network of pilots and freighters, despite how young she is. Leox is described by the author who created him as 1990s Matthew McConaughey given a spaceship. And boy, does that description hit the nail on the head. I honestly can't describe him better than that. Yeah. Moving on. Geode is the navigator of the vessel. He is the best friend of Affie and Leox, and he is the absolute winner of my heart. And he's a rock. He looks like a rock, but he's actually a super cool species called a Ventian that looks like a rock, has no facial features or need of sustenance, and uses some sort of magnetism to move, usually when nobody is looking. But he is a protective, love-filled, selfless hero who deserved more screen time. Page time? Reading time? You know what I mean. Reath Silas. Reath arguably goes through the most character development in this series, and by character development, I mean just one emotional blow after another for this poor kid. We meet Reath as a Padawan at the beginning, and he is a scholar who prefers to avoid missions and study and learn as much as he can. He discovers during a mission with some other Jedi that his master was killed in battle. During that mission, he also accidentally helps free a sentient evil species of dark-side plants that begin spreading terror around the galaxy. Same mission, he gets tricked by a Nihil spy pretending to be a helpless civilian into revealing information about the Jedi Order and how they operate. He gets a new master that he actually gets to choose, who later decides to leave the Jedi Order rather abruptly, and just further drives home Reath's abandonment issues. But even through all of that crap, he becomes a knight who leads some of the most important missions in the whole series, and it feels earned. Okay, we've mentioned some of the plot surrounding the Nihil, the Nameless, and the Drengir, but let's talk about the conflicts themselves. Starting with the least important here, the Drengir. The Drengir are a species of living plants that have a deep connection to the dark side of the Force. They were accidentally released from a Force prison, which allowed them to begin spreading and seeding new Drengir around the Outer Rim. They appear here and there in the novels, and are ultimately defeated on Kashyyyk by even more ancient trees called the White Roshir trees that are super culturally significant for the Wookiees, and they purify the Drengir. The Nameless are terrifying creatures that eat the Force from a being, turning them into this ashy, stone-like husk of what they were before. Their true name is the Sri Karai. They are Force creatures from a planet known only as Planet X, which contains a Vergence in the Force. When they start getting taken from the planet to use as a weapon against the Jedi, the Force balances for this by the spontaneous appearance of a blight that has the same Force-eating effect as the Nameless, but on entire planets. Eventually, a deal is struck between the Jedi and these Sri Karai. Two Jedi wind up staying behind on Planet X to help them rebalance the Vergence, and in doing so, eradicate the blight from the galaxy. The Nihil starts out as this misfit group of pirates and marauders that attack randomly with no goal other than making the most money they can. Along comes Marchion Ro. He is the eye of the Nihil that offers them unknown, uncharted hyperspace lanes that help them make hyperspace jumps nobody else can make. They actually use this in space combat sometimes. They make these little micro jumps to plow through other ships, kamikaze style. It's absolutely insane, but it's super cool. Marchion Ro is a Thrawn-level strategist who manipulates his way into leading the Nihil and taking them from a band of Outer Rim pirates to a criminal organization that takes over half the galaxy and poses the first genuine threat to the Republic and the Jedi in centuries. Marchion is a masterfully crafted villain. He not only consistently outsmarts and outmatches the Jedi and the Republic, manipulating things on such a grand scale that it feels like there's no way he could have predicted it all, but he is also an incredibly skilled fighter, holding his own in lightsaber combat with Jedi. When the Nihil are at their peak, the Republic is considering striking a deal with them to let them keep the half of the galaxy they captured under their rule and recognize them as a government. That's how good Marchion Ro was as a villain. Slowly throughout the series, Marchion kind of devolves into this borderline mad scientist personality because he keeps winning and getting everything, and he realizes that he's the only person who matters because everything he has ever wanted or set in motion has come to fruition, and not even the Jedi can stop it. So naturally, bored with winning, he tries to weaponize the Blight, created by the Virgins on Planet X, to destroy all life in the galaxy, including himself. So yeah, the dude goes crazy, but you feel that progression throughout the whole series, and they handle him so well. I wish I could talk about more in this video, but it's 30 plus books, so I'll definitely be circling back around in the future to go through each of these individually. Overall, this series is fantastic. It's super fun to read through. I highly recommend these books. There's so much more than I was able to pack in here. There's characters like Chancellor So, Vernestra, Orla Jareni, Comac, Avon Starros. Massive props to Claudia Gray, George Mann, Tessa Gratton, Charles Soule, and all the other authors that brought this era of Star Wars to life. It was fantastic and so much fun to go through. Alright, I think that is all for me today. I will see you all next time. Well, I don't see you, but you'll see me. Thanks for watching.